Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we're talking about the straight Outta Compton death claim, and a Supreme Court justice takes issue with Colin Kaepernick. Stay tuned for that and more on Justice is Served.
You are tuned in to Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served.
Shaka wanted any excuse to hear this song again. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Justice is Served. My name is Chelsea Galicia. Thank you for joining me. I'm an attorney. I'm joined by my fellow co-host, Shaka Smith, for another episode of Justice is Served, where we bring you the latest in legal news from this week. Thanks again for joining us. And we finally have an update on this case where we haven't heard very much about this at all for a long time. This case seems to have been going on and on and on. You'll remember that this stemmed from a death that happened in January of 2015. I actually had to look it up because in my mind I had forgotten
it was a while
when
ago,
this happened ago. It was so long ago. So remember that when they were shooting straight Outta Compton, there was this incident with Suge Knight coming to the set, being turned away. He ended up running over two guys. One of them died. That was Terry Carter. And his family has sued Suge Knight, and tried to sue
Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. Smart play in terms of going for the money, but unfortunately they were dismissed from the suit. And so they were dismissed basically because the wrongful death suit alleged that they had hired ex-gang members for security, and that those gang members or security members now are the ones that incited Suge Knight to kind of run over Terry Carter and this other gentleman.
Yeah, but from Dr. Dre's perspective and Ice Cube, it's like, how do you expect for them to have any ability to foresee that this situation would have gone down? Yeah. Generally, if you want to hold somebody liable for something, it's because they took an affirmative action in causing a harm, in this case, a death. They clearly didn't. They weren't even on the scene.
Too far away, too far removed from the action.
Right. So you've got to look at the other option, which is, were they negligent in preventing something that they easily or should have known was going to happen?
Yeah. And
in this case, they said there's no way that you could reasonably see that this was going to happen and that this was the situation that we should have planned for and prevented.
Yeah. So essentially, the person responsible, Suge Knight, is the one who's left on the hook here.
Right. So, I mean, huge, great news for Dre and Ice Cube that they are done with this case. For Suge, though, he's still sitting in jail waiting for both the criminal trial and this civil claim to go forward.
And rightfully so, yeah.
Suge will probably not go anywhere anytime soon. You'll remember he is being held without bail because it is believed that he is a high flight risk.
Yeah.
I don't know when, I don't know if it's even out there, the date of the trial beginning. There's probably still a lot of pre-trial motions still going on. Yeah. And so I guess that's really about it. On a somewhat related but not related, I saw briefly an article about what is going to happen to the Jerry Heller claim now.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that? We on the show were speculating right after Heller died about what was going to happen to his defamation claim, because he claimed that the movie showed him in a unfair light and wrongly sort of portrayed him as somebody who pressured the guys to not have attorneys review the contract.
Exactly, and so they did allow that claim to proceed, but once again, it was a very high bar because he's got to show that it wasn't true, or the estate now has to show that it wasn't true.
Right, so that's the issue now, is what happens to this claim. I was guessing it was going to be tossed. Yemi made a good case, though, for the fact that it would likely remain. And the article I said it's not very sure, but it looks like it will probably be dropped.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I feel like it'll continue, but I think it'll be dismissed.
Yeah. All right, and now, Shaka, just in case this whole election fever is getting to you and you do something crazy, don't try and use the Trump defense, because it's unlikely to work.
Trump made me do it. Trump made me do it.
Yeah, I guess I should believe that somebody tried to do this, but it was an actual defense that a defense attorney tried to put forth for his client.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it made sense. So we have this client. He goes ahead and Nicholas Tavella, 20 years old. So he's convicted. Well, he's pled guilty now to felony ethnic intimidation, misdemeanor terroristic threats, and summary harassment. he essentially went up to another person and said, "Are you from the Middle East?" And they and harassed this individual.
Not just harass him, but like grabbed him by the throat, threatened to put a gun in his chest or a bullet in his chest. So this was heavy harassment, if we could call it
highly threatening assault and battery. But now it's because of the heightened claim because of ethnic intimidation. The question is whether he had malicious intent, which is necessary for that felony. And the lawyer felt, which is a high bar, malicious intent is very difficult to show.
Yeah.
And so if you could show that perhaps the environment is what caused it rather than the malicious intent to attack someone due to their ethnic heritage, then certainly that claim should fall. And so they went with that, and they said, the environment of Trump inciting hate and the Paris attacks and his love for country is what led to all of this.
Please.
And really not the malicious intent.
Right, yeah. So basically, they tried to replace his malicious intent with fear.
Yeah.
To say that this guy was afraid, the Paris attacks had recently happened, Trump is out there saying how dangerous things are and what terrible things are going to happen unless he is elected.
Yeah.
And that fear drove this kid to these heinous actions rather than his own malicious intent. Well, I thought from the beginning it made no sense at all.
Well, I think there's a point to be made though, because I think these things do create.
The point is, don't elect Trump.
Well, no, but that too, and don't listen to him. Or really, I think the environment has been one that's created where someone could not have malicious intent, but do those things and perform those actions based on the environment that's created. So I didn't think it was completely far-fetched, especially for this kid who's 20 years old. But if the kid was 14 or 15 and he's hearing these things, maybe that would be a valid defense.
That's a good question, and that could actually make a difference in my mind about whether that defense should work on a juvenile.
Yeah.
I still would hope in the end that it wouldn't, that we would all have to take responsibility for our own actions, and that whether it's malicious intent or malicious unreasonable fear, I think that somebody should still be on the hook for a hate crime, but it does beg the question of whether, for a juvenile at least, the bar can be
a little bit lower.
I mean, just the idea of giving the Trump defense any legal standing just makes me want to vomit in my own mouth.
But certainly it's been divisive, and certainly it's had an effect on a lot of people. So I could see it in the right context, But
hopefully not.
But this one, of course, stood, and he pled guilty to it. So.
Hopefully these kinds of incidents will go away when he hopefully goes into, crawls into a cave and never to be seen again.
Well, I don't think we're going to have that happen with Twitter, but so I think we'll have a lot to hear from Trump over the course of the next few years.
Yeah, but I just hope that the kind of fear that he has incited, and other people like him who incite that same fear, it would be well, I think maybe this is taking it too far. I would almost like Trump to be on the hook for that hate crime. If this guy says Trump made me do it, maybe Trump should be on, I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but maybe that's wanting to include my personal feelings into the law.
Certainly inciting a riot is certainly a crime, so.
That is true. That is definitely true. And I think he's gotten pretty close in some of his rally speeches.
Yeah, scarily close.
All right, so speaking of scarily, I was a little shaken up by this comment from a Supreme Court justice who I think is amazing. I would consider myself a fan. I think there is only one Supreme Court justice that even has fans. As far as I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess now there's all these people who are like Scalia fans because he, died and they want to look for another version of him. But Scalia in life never, I don't believe, had fans the same way that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has fans. She is, 80-something years old. Yeah. She was a Clinton appointee, and she is pretty liberal, left-leaning, so me and a lot of other progressives really love her. We've dubbed her the notorious RBG, and we're really shocked when she made some comments about Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. And so basically she just disagreed with his, she did an interview with Katie Couric, and she disagreed with his protesting of the national anthem. As we know, he's either sat down or taken a knee because he's protesting the oppression of black individuals, as seen through the lens of the police brutality. And she thought it was dumb and stupid and even arrogant. and she doesn't want to criminalize it. So at least we're
She's
solid
not
footing.
saying to arrest him for sure.
Yeah, she's saying obviously it's very dangerous to arrest anyone if they're not causing harm to others. So that's not what she's advocating. But her personal stance is it's dumb or stupid. But I think that is reflective of the fact that she doesn't have a connection to that sort of black experience.
So maybe that she's been very progressive on, women's issues and other things that she can relate to better than a
She's been
race.
progressive on minority issues as well, but she's not going to be able to be progressive in certain, especially for what he's doing. I think it almost requires an experiential type of background that he's doing because he feels and he's known what discrimination is like and he's felt it in his own life. So what he's seeing is a reflection of what he's already dealt with.
Yeah.
And I think having that take on it makes you maybe take a firmer stand, and it's not dumb or stupid to you.
Yeah. So in response to her comments, Colin Kaepernick said, he was, I guess maybe the word is, disappointed in her comments, but that he cannot show more respect for a piece of cloth than he does for human lives. And I thought that was a pretty powerful statement to make, and I can totally support and understand that comment. And I actually think that what he's doing is commendable. I mean, people get so upset when we talk about here people rioting after these police brutality cases go down. They don't like the looting and the rioting and the protests and all this stuff. People say, oh, you shouldn't protest, you should go get a job, that kind of thing. All right, well, now somebody with a job, a high-paying job, is using the platform that job gives him and making a statement without being disruptive or, out there being not even just disruptive, but I mean, the rioting, that can be dangerous and harmful.
But I think his message from the very beginning has been he's just protesting this type of treatment. And I think because what she did was she almost likened it to flag burning. And I thought to myself, I don't really agree with flag burning, but I pretty mumuch agree with Colin Kaepernick and what he's doing. And so why is that? But I thought, to me, flag burning is a different sort of animal. There's almost an official break with an ideology of a country versus a particular way people are being treated within the country.
Because flag burning has with it this appearance that you want to destroy the United States or what it represents. And his kneeling doesn't do that.
For me, he's almost committing an act of omission, and I think that makes a difference in this case.
Yeah, I've been really surprised by the number of Facebook posts that I have seen about this. And a lot of people who say, well, I will teach my kids always to stand for the flag. And I kind of want to respond and say, I hope you teach your kids to take a stand when they see injustice occurring around our country, even if it doesn't affect them personally.
Yeah,
Because everybody that I have seen comment in that way is not a black person or even a minority.
But I also get it, though, because when he first did it, I was like, that's a little disrespectful of the country and the things that the country has given to you, because there's opportunity here and you're able to play in this football league and make a great amount of money, and certainly a lot of freedoms here as well. So I got the disrespect argument. For me personally, while I do agree with Colin Kaepernick, it's not something I would have personally done. That's not the way I would have protested.
What would you do?
Maybe I'd be writing things that the public can see and writing essays, and I do that now, but with his platform I'd be doing even more of it. So that would be my form of protest. Personally, I think I would feel I was disrespecting the country if I were to do that. So that's why I personally don't protest in that way. But I agree with what he's doing, and I agree with his right to do it.
Awesome. All right. One of the few stories that I think we're exactly on the same page about. All right, and probably we're going to be on the same page about this case here. So it is surprising that it's taken kind of this long for the Supreme Court to hear a death penalty case dealing with race.
Yeah.
And they just heard arguments on a pretty specific but potentially far-reaching case just last week. And this case has to do with a man who was convicted of murder. Nobody is trying to say he's innocent. No. He just shot an ex-girlfriend in front of her children, along with the man who he suspected his girlfriend had cheated on him with, and also shot his own stepsister who survived. But anyway, the guilt or innocent part is not the issue here. Yeah. The part at issue is what happened in the penalty phase.
So we get this guy, Walter Keanu, and so basically as they're doing sentencing, they're considering whether or not, but choosing between life or death. You know, whether he goes to prison for life or the death penalty.
Yeah, when we talk about he, it's Dwayne Buck.
Dwayne Buck,
he was convicted in Texas of murder.
Yeah, and so the jury's making that determination, and they're supposed to, you know, consider a litany of factors, but chief among them, the dangerousness of the individual if he were to be let out. Or,
yeah, this is something that not all states have, but
Yeah.
specifically Texas has this future dangerousness prong
Yeah.
in their evaluation of whether somebody deserves a death penalty, which means that somebody's got to show that he is very likely to commit a dangerous act in the future, and only if that threshold is met can he be sentenced to death.
Exactly, and so this expert, Walter Quijano, comes in and testifies.
And
that-
not only just comes in and
Yeah.
testifies, but doesn't he was called by the defense,
Oh, yeah, yeah. And,
which is a very weird thing, but okay.
And he comes in to testify that due to the fact that the defendant is black, he is more likely to commit violent crimes in the future.
I mean, just straight up. I mean,
Yeah.
this was no minced words
Yeah,
here. This was not like our reading of it. I mean, straight up said the fact that he was black increased the probability that he would commit future acts of criminal violence.
Exactly, and you know, Dwayne said he was shocked that no one in the courtroom, no one gasped, no one objected, his lawyers didn't object, no one said anything, and it was business as usual.
It was like this happens all the time in court.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens after this is, you know, he's sentenced to death, and you know, after several appeals, John Cornyn, the Attorney General at the time, he realizes that, yes, these cases were wrongly sentenced. So, you know, you can't have Keanu going up and saying, due to this one factor, they're going to be more dangerous. It's unconstitutional and obviously extremely prejudicial. And so as a result, he decides to rehear all these cases, about 6 cases. We get to the 6th case, Dwayne Buck, and the AG changes.
Right. Yeah, and so one of the details of this story that I thought was really interesting is that it wasn't even in this case that psychologist Walter Quijano was sort of called out on. It was another case that somehow made it to the Supreme Court. So it's kind of, you know, just by luck that somebody found out, or the Supreme Court found out that Quijano was saying something like this.
Yeah, because Dwayne said he was getting no traction, you know, for the
He was
ineffective
trying
assistance
to
of counsel. Yeah.
appeal his case and getting nowhere. So in a whole separate another case, Walter Quijano is found to have been saying this.
Yeah.
It makes a difference in about 6 cases because that's where he's testified to this kind of conclusion. And in
Cornyn
5,
says we got to hear these cases again, and so, or at least for sentencing. And so they do it for 5, and then we get Greg Abbott, the new Attorney General, who reneges on Cornyn's promise to these 6 guys. And so now he's got to go through the process again, and finally he's going to go up in front of the Supreme Court.
Well, by the time that he goes to try and appeal it, the reason that he's not allowed to appeal is because it's taken too long.
Yeah.
So there's just all these crazy obstacles that have been put in his place that don't really make a lot of sense, and now the Supreme Court is taking up that issue. Is this a special enough circumstance where, despite blowing a statute of limitations on appeals and all that stuff, that this kind of prejudicial testimony should be enough to undo this death penalty? Not the conviction itself, but the sentence. Right.
Yeah, and so we know the state contends that race was not the only factor as to why he got the death penalty. It was just one of these many factors, and that really the overriding factors were different elements.
They
that had nothing
said
to
it
do
was the
with race.
heinousness of the crime,
his lack of remorse at the time, and you know, so a variety of things. But I think when you have an expert up there saying this person is more dangerous because he is black, and that increases the likelihood of committing future crimes, how does the jury not then say, well, that's the standard we're using, that's more dangerous?
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. So even though sometimes the Supreme Court will hear a case and very narrowly answer the issue in that case. And it seemed like when the Supreme Court justices were asking questions, one of them even asked out loud, like, is this really the case that we want to make stand for something of this nature? Because in this kind of case where somebody committed such a heinous act, the public almost doesn't want to see this kind of death penalty sentence overturned.
Well, except for the fact that we do know that Dwayne Buck, the last 20 years that he's been in jail, has kind of been pious. You know,
an upstanding death row inmate.
An upstanding death row inmate. There are many minor infractions you can get being a death row inmate, from hanging artwork on your walls and just different minor infractions. He's received none in the last 20 years, and he's used that time to minister to other people on death row.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if they weigh that. But it also is an opportunity for them to say this court to say something like, any mechanism that uses race in the determination of the death penalty is hereby unconstitutional.
Yeah.
I mean, they can make a statement like that.
I think they will. I think it'll be very specific to this case, and I think they will make that statement.
They'll make the statement, and then I wonder if the language will be used so that it will lend itself to other cases, then being able to cite this one, or whether the language will be so narrowly tailored to this case that other cases can't use it.
Well, I mean, what he did is unconstitutional. You cannot use race as a factor for sentencing. It's just not maybe explicitly written in a Supreme Court opinion.
Yeah.
And so I think they will certainly make that a blanket.
Because then what can
statement.
happen is if it's said, they'll have to say what we think they're going to say. And it looks like, based on the questions that some of the justices were asking, that they are going to side with Buck. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my fave, but who just kind of disappointed me, as I mentioned in a couple stories ago, said, what competent counsel would put that evidence before a jury?
Yeah.
So she knows that something's up. And even Samuel Alito, who is a George Bush appointee, so a little more conservative, said what occurred at the penalty phase of this trial is indefensible. He described the testimony as bizarre. So that lets us know that they're leaning, at least at this point, to him.
Yeah, I'm certain they. Other than other facts to come out, I'm pretty sure they've made up their minds. It's pretty reprehensible what took place.
Right. So if they say something like what I'm hoping that they're going to say is that any, I don't know if the word is practice or any, I'm just going to use the word because I can't think of a better one right now, but any practice that uses race or any scale where race is given more weight in practice. So, for example, there are some like ineffective counsel for indigenous, indigent people. So can't afford their own private attorneys.
Yeah.
All right. So what we see with those is that very often those people are more likely to face the death penalty than somebody who's convicted but has their own private attorney.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is they say that any time that there is a difference, like historically, that the death penalty is more often given with if you are, indigent or if you are of certain race, that the death penalty is likely unconstitutional. They may not use this case to declare it unconstitutional, but they can slowly chip away at the number of times that we see race or not just race, but minority, and usually it's probably going to be something associated with money.
Well, yeah, any suspect class or...
Yeah,
or I don't think they're going to go that broad on this case. I don't think they go that broad at all.
I don't think they want to, but I feel that there's going to be something that is slowly going to chip away at the death penalty, and that in about 10 years it will be severely limited, if not deemed unconstitutional.
I don't see it going that far. I do think it'll basically say race cannot be used as a predominant factor in sentencing unless for some reason race is at issue in the case. Maybe you're a KKK member, at which point there might be some consideration there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's going to be anything broader than... Because
this is a really explicit prejudicial thing.
That's why I think it's really easy for all the members of the Supreme Court to come say that this particular case is egregious. But then
there are other things that are not so racist overtly, but they're racist when you look at the numbers. Like you look at the number of cases and you just look at sort of behind the scenes of what goes on when a certain statute is applied.
Well, I think the language they're going to use about race and sentencing is going to be kind of a nice base, so that going forward, when we do identify why black men are overwhelmingly sentenced to harsher sentences, that might be a way to jump off to another case that might broaden those kind of sentences in that whole arena. Because as we watched the 13th documentary, did a little special on Sunday.
Yeah, please go tune into that. That was a Black Hollywood Live and Popcorn Talk, their sister networks here at AfterBuzz, and we just did on Sunday night a special on that documentary that Ava DuVernay just made and went out on Netflix on Friday evening. So be sure to check out the movie and our special on it.
Exactly, and we all know from watching that our eyes were opened even more so to the disparity in sentencing laws laws and how those laws have really broken up black communities. And so I think this is just a particular case where it was spelled out and it was just as egregious as possibly could be.
Yeah.
But I think this kind of sentiment happens, and the jury is always kind of made to believe because he's black, he's more dangerous. So it was almost a good thing that this guy was so explicit and that we're able to identify it now and hopefully have a Supreme Court decision that will give us a good platform for fighting it in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, so this is a really interesting case here. I know that if I hear a state criminologist testify that a drug or DNA or something is a match, then I'm very likely to believe that.
Oh, 100%. We watch CSI, so we know that they're like spot on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we've heard of, some people have made mistakes, and there's been even some systematic mistakes and errors that happen. Okay, fine. But still, overall, I would give it like 90% weight.
Yeah, because normally you figure something that's happening is easily identifiable. If there's a problem, and we can fix it. But here, not so much.
Yeah, so, this just shocked my conscience when I saw that there was a crime lab chemist from Massachusetts. Her name is Annie Dukin, and she pled guilty to obstruction of justice and perjury and tampering with evidence because she literally fudged test results.
Yeah, she misanalyzed. She lost some she didn't even perform, and then she ended up just kind of writing reports as if they were fine, and she did these tests.
And testifying as an expert witness for the state, which, I'm not sure if that was just straight part of her job or if she additionally got paid an expert witness fee, because those can be incredibly lucrative.
Yeah, and this was so she starts in 2003 and stops in 2012. She gets her last case in 2011. So for all these years, she's just kind of fudging data, 24,000 convictions she's involved in.
Yeah, so now the question is, so this happened a while ago. She's actually done her prison time. It was 3 to 5 years, and she was paroled earlier this year in April of 2016. So the story is, crazy enough. Now the question is, what do you do with all these 24,000 cases?
Yeah, and so some people want them to just be summarily dismissed.
I kind of want that one.
Yeah, but it's 24,000 cases, and the public defendant is saying, look, that might be the best route, because if we're able to hear all these cases, even if we increased our force by a third and got 500 more attorneys, state-appointed attorneys, it would take us to 2064 to hear all these cases.
That's insane.
So you shouldn't be sitting in jail, or your time has already passed in jail while these cases are heard.
Yeah. So I don't agree with this. Let's retry each one individually. It's a crazy waste of resources. I guess this is the state of Massachusetts, so my tax dollars aren't paying for it, but I can't imagine that the taxpayers of Massachusetts put up the expense to have these cases tried and then want to redo all of them all over again. Yeah. And
not to mention, 62% of the cases were for simple possession. So most of those people pled out and are gone, probably already out in the street,
But the problem is, even for them, even
they
if
have a record now.
Exactly.
And so those records should be vacated for sure, because if we're not dealing with people that are violent offenders,
that's my big issue.
And I think they need to call into, look at her cases and say, look, these are the violent offenders. Here we'll look individually, but for these guys, they need to be let go. Yeah. 25% were for distribution, and that means those guys received mandatory minimums. And again, 13th documentary, we know what mandatory minimums really mean. So
I'm on the side of toss them out.
Yeah, I toss them out without prejudice, so that the prosecution can then go after its strongest cases and continue from there.
Wow, look how much we're agreeing today. What's happening?
We had a good spate of cases.
Either I'm going more central or you're becoming more progressive.
Well, hey, that documentary certainly might have done it, right?
All right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I guess because we agreed so much, we got through it so quickly. Nice. We're going to have to find more cases where there's more contention for next time. So that brings us to the end. So thanks so much for joining us. You can tweet at me, Chelsea Galicia.
Yeah, you can find me, Shaka Strong, on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, any social media platform.
Yes, and don't forget to comment, like, and join us again next week for another episode of Justice is Served.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Christie, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live. the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live. Scipio, Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.